To classify bonds as either polar or nonpolar, the first thing we need to know is how electronegative an atom is. So for atoms that are very strong or very electronegative, of the ones that we're going to be looking at a lot, this is going to be nitrogen and oxygen. So that right there is something that you will want to memorize. And then as we talk about the weak ones that we will see a lot of, that's going to be carbon and hydrogen. So the polar covalent bonds, these would be bonds where we have ones that are unequal and they're sharing with each other, but they're not going to share equally. And then the nonpolar, those are going to be when we have two that are equal and they're sharing with each other. So if we go through this list here and we look at what we have, in this case, remember that hydrogen is on our weak list. So we have a weak one and it is sharing with oxygen, which is on the strong list, so it's sharing with a strong one. So that would be unequal sharing. So this first one, that's going to be a polar covalent bond. If we look at the next one, hydrogen is on the weak list and carbon is also on the weak list. So if two weak ones are sharing with each other, that would be a nonpolar covalent bond. Carbon is weak and the other carbon would be weak as well, so we can call that one nonpolar. If we look at the next one, it's a double bond. The fact that it's a double covalent bond doesn't affect whether it's going to be polar or nonpolar. So we do this the same way. Carbon is on the weak list and oxygen is on the strong list. So that would be unequal sharing because they have unequal strengths. And then for E, we have oxygen, which is strong, sharing with nitrogen, which is strong. So two strong ones would be equally sharing, so that would be nonpolar. The next one, nitrogen is strong, hydrogen is weak, so that would be polar. And then the next one, we have weak sharing with strong, that would be polar. And then the last one, you have a weak one with a double bond to another weak one, so that would be a nonpolar. Okay, so notice that we just need to classify each atom as being either strong or weak, and then we can then assign whether it's going to be a polar covalent bond or a nonpolar covalent bond. If we look at the next question, it's really just doing the exact same thing. It's putting it in the structure of a molecule and looking at the bonds. So if you went through down in the very next one and you wrote on top of each one of these whether they're weak or strong, I'm going to do that for the first one. All of my hydrogens are weak, so I'm just putting W's right on top. The carbons are also on the weak list. And so I've wrote them on there, and I'm just going to change color so it'll be easier to see. The strong ones are nitrogen and oxygen. And once we have that, we can go through and we can do the same thing we did in the previous question. We can assign them either polar or nonpolar based on whether we have equal sharing or not. So this, it's two weak ones, it would be nonpolar. Two weak ones, two weak ones. So all of these where I have two weak ones with each other, those are going to be nonpolar. So there's a lot, and I know it's getting a little messy here as I write them on, but I've gone through and I've labeled all of those as nonpolar. And then for the other ones, maybe just change the color to make it a little clearer. If we have a weak and a strong one sharing, that would be a polar covalent bond. Here we have another example where you have unequal sharing with each other, and then this would be unequal sharing with each other, and same thing down here. Okay, so notice that we're putting polar anywhere that you have a strong one and a weak one that are supposed to be sharing the electrons. If we look at the very next one, again, we can put a weak on top of all of the weak ones. So hydrogens are all weak. The carbons are all weak as well. And then in this example, you really just have one that is going to be strong. So that's my oxygen over here. And then we can go through and we can write nonpolar if they're sharing equally. So we have a bunch of those. And then in this case, we just have one where you're going to have that unequal sharing. So this would be polar over on that end. And then for the very last one, if we do the exact same thing, weaks for all of the hydrogen, again, because they are on the weak list up here. And that's something that you'll just want to memorize. So hydrogens are weak. Notice carbon is also on my weak list. So I'm going to put a little W on top of my carbons. And then when I get to the oxygen, The oxygen here is on the strong list. Okay, so that's up here. And now I can go through and I can, I'm just going to put an X. So X is going to equal nonpolar, just to make it a little cleaner here. So anything where we're sharing equally, I'm just going to put a little X on top to indicate those. So all of these where you have two weak ones sharing with each other, those would be nonpolar covalent bonds. So we have mostly nonpolar covalent bonds in this case. And then anywhere that we have a weak and a strong sharing, that would be your polars. So there's two polar covalent bonds in that one. So that's how we would go through the molecule, and we would label the bonds as being either polar or nonpolar. Again, the key to labeling that is really memorizing this part right here and understanding that the nitrogen and the oxygen, they are very strong as far as electronegativity is concerned, and then the carbon and the hydrogen, they're going to be very weak.